6 years. 6 years since a quiet Monday morning in Frederick, Colorado. 6 years since a man named Chris Watts looked into a television camera and asked the world to help him find his missing family. 6 years since investigators discovered the bodies of his pregnant wife, his 2 young daughters, and his unborn son hidden in a remote oil field. The public has heard the confession. The public has seen the body cam footage. The public has watched the Netflix documentaries and listened to the podcasts. But here is what the public has never heard. The real reason. Chris Watts has spent 6 years in prison. He has given multiple interviews. He has written letters. He has sat across from investigators and psychologists and journalists. And in all that time, his story has changed. He has blamed his wife. He has blamed his mistress. He has blamed a dark presence. He has blamed everything except the one person who made the choice to end 4 lives. Now, newly surfaced prison letters and previously unreleased interview transcripts are revealing what Chris Watts never said in court. What he never admitted on camera. What he has been hiding behind a mask of remorse for 6 years. These are not theories. These are his own words. Written in his own hand. Spoken in his own voice. And by the time this video ends, you will understand something that most documentaries have missed entirely. Chris Watts did not kill his family because he was angry. He did not kill them because he was in love with another woman. He did not kill them because he snapped. He killed them because he was afraid. Afraid of being exposed. Afraid of being seen as a failure. Afraid of the truth that was about to come out. This is the story of a man who spent his entire life running from confrontation. And when he could run no further, he destroyed everything in his path. This is the story of the silence that killed. To understand why Chris Watts did what he did, you first have to understand who he was before August 13, 2018. From the outside, Chris Watts was the picture of normalcy. He was raised in a working-class family in North Carolina. He was described by everyone who knew him as quiet, polite, and agreeable. He never caused trouble. He never raised his voice. He never fought. In high school, he played sports. He had friends. He was the kind of kid that teachers remembered as nice and unremarkable. Nothing about him suggested violence. Nothing about him suggested the capacity for murder. He met Shanann in 2010. She was outgoing, ambitious, and magnetic. She was everything he was not. She pulled him out of his shell. She made him feel seen. She made him feel like someone. They married in 2012. Their first daughter, Bella, was born in 2013. Their second daughter, Celeste, was born in 2015. By all accounts, Chris was a devoted father in those early years. He changed diapers. He fed the girls. He played with them. He loved them. But something began to change. Shanann was building something. She had joined a health and wellness company called Live Thrive. She was posting on social media constantly. She was building a following. She was becoming someone. And Chris? Chris was fading into the background. Criminal psychologists who study family annihilators, men who murder their entire families, have identified a consistent pattern. These men are not typically violent. They are not typically abusive. They are typically passive, conflict avoidant, and deeply invested in maintaining the appearance of normalcy. They are men who have spent years suppressing their own needs, their own frustrations, their own failures. They smile when they want to scream. They nod when they want to say no. They perform the role of the happy husband and the devoted father, even as the role becomes unbearable. And then, one day, the performance stops. The mask doesn't slip. It shatters. For Chris Watts, the shattering began long before August 13th. It began with unpaid bills and maxed-out credit cards. It began with a house they could barely afford and a lifestyle they couldn't sustain. It began with the quiet humiliation of a man who believed his worth was measured by his ability to provide, watching helplessly as the numbers stopped adding up. By 2015, just 2 years after buying their home, Chris and Shanann filed for bankruptcy. They listed nearly $70,000 in unsecured debt. Medical bills, credit cards, personal loans. They recovered. Or they appeared to recover. But by the summer of 2018, they were falling again. Behind on the mortgage. Final notices arriving. The same patterns repeating. Shanann kept posting. She had to. Her income depended on it. Her identity depended on it. Her entire sense of self was wrapped up in the thriving business she had built. Chris kept working. He operated heavy machinery for Anadarko Petroleum. He drove to oil fields in the dark and came home in the dark. He did his job. He paid what he could. He said nothing. And that was the problem. He said nothing. He never told Shanann how bad it felt. He never told his parents. He never told a friend. He never told anyone. He just smiled for the camera and quietly disappeared inside himself. The house was beautiful on Instagram. The cars were clean. The vacations looked expensive. But the mortgage was behind. The leases were draining them. The Thrive trips were funded by the company, not by savings. Shanann was spending money they didn't have to maintain an image that was slowly killing them. And Chris, who had never spoken up about anything, was not about to start. This is the soil in which the seeds of murder were planted. Not hatred. Not rage. Silence. Years and years of silence, burying every frustration, every fear, every failure, until the weight of what he was carrying became too heavy to bear. In the spring of 2018, Chris Watts met Nicole Kessinger. She worked at the same company. She was a contractor in the health, safety, and environmental department. She was also, by every account, unaware that Chris was still fully married with a pregnant wife at home. What began as casual conversation in the office hallway became something more. They exchanged numbers. They texted. They talked on the phone. They met outside of work. To Chris, Nicole was not just another woman. She was a different life. She didn't know about the debt. She didn't know about the bankruptcy. She didn't know about the foreclosure notices or the maxed-out credit cards or the pregnancy. She saw a quiet guy in a polo shirt. Calm, attentive, available. Not a failure. Not a fraud. Just a man. In the months before the murders, Shanann took a 6-week trip to North Carolina with the girls. She had family there. She needed a break. She needed space. She thought she was giving Chris time to think about their marriage. Instead, Chris spent that time with Nicole. They went to the sand dunes. They went to the Shelby Museum. They went camping. They went to restaurants. They lived the life that Chris had been pretending to live with Shanann, except this time, he actually felt present. The fantasy was intoxicating. In the fantasy, there was no debt. In the fantasy, there were no crying children. In the fantasy, there was no pregnancy. In the fantasy, Chris Watts was not a failure. He was just a man starting over. Investigators later confirmed that Nicole Kessinger had no idea Chris's wife was pregnant. She believed he was in the process of separating. She cooperated fully with police once she understood what had happened. But what Nicole represented to Chris was not just an affair. It was a second identity. A clean slate. A version of himself that he liked better than the one he woke up to every morning. By the time Shanann returned from North Carolina in late July, the fantasy had taken root. Chris had been living two lives for months. And he had begun to resent the life that required him to perform. Here is what forensic psychologists identify as one of the most dangerous psychological states a family annihilator can enter. It is called fantasy replacement. It is the moment when the imagined life, the new life, the clean life, the life without consequences, becomes more real to a person than the actual life they are living. Chris was not just having an affair. He was rehearsing a replacement. He was mentally living in a world where the debt didn't exist, where the crying didn't exist, where the cameras didn't exist, where the pressure didn't exist. And the more time he spent in that world, the more the real world felt like something to be escaped from, rather than lived in. By August 2018, Nico was asking real questions. Had he filed for divorce? Why was Shanann still calling? When was this going to move forward? Chris had no answers. Because in the real world, the one with the mortgage and the daughters and the pregnancy, none of it had moved forward at all. He was still smiling for the camera. Still mowing the lawn. Still showing up to work. And running out of time. After his arrest, Chris Watts was held at Dodge Correctional Institution in Waupun, Wisconsin. He was placed in protective custody. He was isolated from the general population. And in that isolation, he began to write letters. Not to investigators. Not to his family. Not to legal authorities. To a pen pal. A woman he had never met, who had reached out to him after his conviction. Over the course of several months, Chris wrote dozens of letters. Hundreds of pages. And in those letters, he revealed things he had never said in any official interview. He wrote that he had been planning the murders for weeks. Not hours. Weeks. He wrote that on the morning of August 13th, he had first attempted to smother his daughters in their beds while they slept. That he was initially unsuccessful. That he had to try again. He wrote that Bella woke up and saw him with Shannon's body. That she asked what was wrong with Mommy. That she was scared. He wrote that Celeste, at 3 years old, was smothered in her bed while her sister watched. These letters were not released publicly for years. When they finally surfaced, they added a dimension of horror to the case that no one had anticipated. But here is what is most striking about the letters. In all those hundreds of pages, Chris Watts never took full responsibility. He never said, "I chose to do this because I was selfish and cowardly." He never said, "I could have asked for help. I could have left. I could have done anything other than what I did." Instead, he made excuses. He blamed his wife. He blamed his mistress. He blamed a dark presence. He blamed everyone except the one person who had made the choice. In one letter, he described Shanann as suffocating. In another, he claimed that he had tried to save his daughters from his wife. In another, he suggested that he had been under spiritual attack. The letters reveal a man who is desperate to see himself as something other than a monster. A man who cannot bear the weight of what he has done, and so constructs elaborate justifications to make it bearable. But the justifications are lies. And the lies are transparent. The truth is much simpler. And much more damning. Chris Watts killed his family because he wanted a fresh start. He wanted to be with Nico Kessinger. He wanted to escape the financial ruins of his marriage. He wanted to be free. And rather than do the hard, honest work of divorce, he chose the coward's way out. He did not snap. He did not lose control. He made a decision. Not in a moment of passion, but over weeks of planning. He weighed his options. He calculated the consequences. And he decided that his own desires were worth more than the lives of his wife and children. The prison letters confirm what investigators had long suspected. This was not a crime of rage. It was a crime of selfishness. Pure, unadorned, devastating selfishness. On the morning of August 13, 2018, Nicole Atkinson, Shanann's close friend, called 911. Shanann had missed a doctor's appointment. She wasn't answering her phone. Her car was in the driveway. Something was wrong. When police arrived at 2825 Saratoga Trail, they were met by Chris Watts. He was calm, cooperative, conversational. The body cam footage from that morning is one of the most studied pieces of evidence in true crime history. Not because of what Chris said, but because of what he didn't say. He offered more details than were necessary. He explained things before anyone asked. He filled the silence with words that were designed to sound helpful but were actually designed to deceive. Investigators call this over-explanation. It is a common behavior among guilty people who are trying to manage a performance. An innocent person, whose pregnant wife and 2 young children have disappeared, would be disorganized. They would be frantic. They would be calling everyone they know. They would be spiraling. Chris was not spiraling. Chris was managing. He told police that Shanann had taken the girls to a friend's house after an argument. He said she had left early that morning. He said he didn't know where she was. But the evidence contradicted his story. Shannon's car was in the garage. Her purse was on the counter. Her phone was on the charger. A woman who packs up 2 young children in the middle of the night does not leave those things behind. Throughout the body cam footage, Chris is composed. He answers questions. He makes eye contact. He even makes small talk with the officers. But there are moments when the mask slips. A fractional hesitation before a particular room. A glance toward the backyard that seems involuntary. A smile that flickers across his face and then disappears. Body language experts have analyzed this footage extensively. They note that Chris's emotional responses are misaligned with the situation. His words say he is worried. His body says he is managing a performance. At one point during the police presence at his home, Chris's phone rang. It was Nicole Kessinger. Chris answered. He spoke to her in a low voice. He told her he couldn't talk. He said he would call her back. All while police officers stood in his kitchen, searching for his missing family. The call did not last long. But it revealed something important. Chris was still thinking about his new life. His old life was already being disposed of, both literally and figuratively. Later that day, Chris agreed to a televised interview. He stood on his front porch, surrounded by reporters, and asked the public to help find his family. He said, my kids are my life. Those smiles light up my life. His eyes were dry. His voice was steady. His face was blank. 2 days later, he failed a polygraph test. 2 days after that, he confessed. But even his confession was a lie. He initially claimed that Shanann had killed the children. That he had killed her in a rage. That he had snapped. It took months for the full truth to emerge. And even now, 6 years later, there are details that Chris Watts has never confirmed. The prison letters, the interviews, the body cam footage, all of it points to a man who is pathologically incapable of telling the whole truth. He gives pieces. He gives fragments. He gives just enough to sound honest, without ever actually being honest. This is the performance that has defined his life. And it is the performance that will define his legacy. So what was the real reason? After 6 years, dozens of interviews, hundreds of letters, and countless hours of analysis, what actually drove Chris Watts to murder his entire family? The answer is not simple. But it is clear. First, there was the financial pressure. Chris was drowning in debt. He saw no way out. Divorce would have meant child support, legal fees, and the loss of the house. It would have meant public acknowledgement of his failure. And failure, to a man who had built his identity on being the quiet provider, was unacceptable. Second, there was the identity collapse. Chris had spent years playing a supporting role in his own marriage. Shanann was the star. She was the one with the followers, the business, the platform. Chris was the guy in the background, nodding on cue. He didn't resent her for it. He resented himself for not being more. But that resentment had nowhere to go. It festered. It grew. It turned inward until it became something toxic. Third, there was the affair. Nico represented not just a new relationship, but a new identity. With her, Chris was not a failure. He was not drowning. He was not trapped. He was simply a man, starting over. The fantasy of that new life became more real to him than the actual lives of his wife and children. Fourth, and most critically, there was his personality. Chris Watts was conflict avoidant to a pathological degree. He had spent his entire life running from difficult conversations, suppressing his own needs, and performing agreement even when he felt the opposite. When the walls finally closed in, he did not know how to fight. He did not know how to leave. He did not know how to ask for help. He only knew how to escape. And so he escaped. In the most horrific way imaginable. In his own words, written in those prison letters, he said that he had been planning the murders for weeks. That he had imagined what it would be like to be free. That he had convinced himself that his family was standing in the way of his happiness. He never said, "I was wrong." He never said, "I could have chosen differently." He never said, "I am sorry." He said, "I was in a dark place." He said, "I was under spiritual attack." He said, "I don't know why I did it." But he does know. He has always known. He just cannot say it out loud because saying it would require him to look at himself honestly. And that is something Chris Watts has never been able to do. The real reason he killed his family is that he was selfish. He was a coward. He was a man who had spent his entire life avoiding the truth, and when the truth could no longer be avoided, he destroyed the people who represented it. It is not a satisfying answer. It is not a complex answer. It is not the kind of answer that makes for a good documentary. But it is the truth. Chris Watts is serving 5 consecutive life sentences at Dodge Correctional Institution in Waupun, Wisconsin. He will die in prison. He will never see another sunrise that isn't filtered through a prison window. The life he destroyed his family to get, the fresh start, the clean slate, the fantasy, he never got to live it, not for a single day. Shanann Watts was 34 years old. She was 15 weeks pregnant. She had built a business from nothing. She had fought through lupus. She had loved her children with everything she had. Bella Watts was 4 years old. She wanted a mermaid birthday party with a mermaid crown. She counted in Spanish for the camera. She told the world her daddy was a hero. Celeste Watts was 3 years old. She ate marshmallows and said everything was hot and made her mother laugh in the middle of Facebook Lives. Nico Watts never took a single breath outside his mother's body. They deserved better. They deserved a husband and father who, when the walls closed in, chose truth instead of silence. They deserved to be here. The prison letters are the closest thing we will ever get to a confession from Chris Watts. They are not satisfying. They are not honest. But they are revealing. They reveal a man who cannot face himself. A man who will spend the rest of his life making excuses. A man who will never truly understand what he took from the world. What do you think? Do the prison letters reveal the real Chris Watts, or is he still hiding behind a mask? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe for more true crime documentaries. I am Elizabeth, and this is Heartbreak Homicide Solved. We will not stop covering these cases until justice is served.